Hello everyone, it is Vlogmas day 12. I've got my wax melt, got my coffee, and I've got my work in progress in this bag ready to go. So for today's Vlogmas, I am hoping to do like a punch needle tutorial whilst I make this. It's going to be not probably as in-depth as the other one on my page, which I will link that you can go and watch. But I'm going to do my best to walk you through punch needle and also all the way through to the process of me putting it on this bag. So hopefully it all goes okay. My cloth is already on my hoop and it's already nice and tight. It could be a little bit tighter. So when you have your embroidery hoop, you do want it to be literally drum tight. So once it's on, you can use a screwdriver in there to tighten it, and you can also gently pull the cloth down and around just to get it tighter. The fact that I draw on the small inside hoop is just a personal preference of mine. You can draw on either side of the hoop, it really doesn't matter. This is just how I've adopted to do it and how I just continue to. Also, you don't really want that little of a space there. The cloth should come a bit further, especially if you're new. You want a good few inches around the outside because it will just mean it will stay tighter. Once you get more experience, you can use smaller scraps of cloth, but at the start make sure you've got a good few inches of cloth around. I also masking tape the edges because it stops it fraying and going everywhere. As you can see, monk's cloth frays lots, so the masking tape just closes the edges and stops it going everywhere, which it's already doing. So I'm actually going to tape that edge. And also, if you're doing a design that has text or something, make sure it's flipped before you draw it, because obviously this side is going to be your finished piece, and this, as you can tell with the Santa here, if I can get it round, it's flipped mirror image. Okay, so for this piece I'm using the laser punch needle set at about 2.5 centimeters. This is the middle of the 3 needles that it comes with. I've got a threader that I made myself. There is a YouTube short showing you how I make my own threader because they break quite easily and they're easily lost, as I just lost mine. Punch needle threader, I'm using 100% cotton, double knit, in red, white, black and grey. Now I will change the camera angle so you can see exactly what I'm doing, and I will walk you through punch needle briefly. Okay, so you've got your design on the cloth and it's in the hoop. You want to get your punch needle, you want to place your finger over the open side. So a punch needle has this open side and it has this smoother side. So you want to put your finger over the open slot completely, cover that completely, so you've got the little hole on the other side. The smaller hole on that smooth side is where your threader is going to go down. So you ideally want to straighten out your threader as much as possible. Place your finger over and then thread it down all the way through the handle. Thread it all the way until you see it at the end. And then once it's at the end, you can grab it and pull it through. And then you want to open the end like this, and that's where your yarn will go through. Now when you have yarn, you tend to have 2 ends. So you have the end that's wrapped around and the end that's in one of the centres. If you can find this interpulling end, perfect, because that is going to pull much nicer from the centre than the ball having to roll around. So you thread your yarn through there and tighten it back up again so it doesn't come out. And then you just pull it all the way through like that, take off the threader, give yourself only a small tail, and then that is your punch needle threaded. When you punch needle, you want to make sure the tail is always behind where you're going. So that open end is always facing the direction you're going. You hold it like a pen, like I say, with the open end facing where you're going, the tail behind, and you're simply going to put your needle point into the cloth where you want to start, all the way down. And then when you come up, you only want to come up and graze the top of the cloth, move forward and punch down again. You want to make your stitches ideally consistent in length, nice and short, and at the start just work nice and slow. When you come to a point where you want to change direction, whilst the needle is in the fabric, turn the needle, lift up, and the open end will now be facing this direction, ready to punch all the way down to there. Again, change direction, swivel the needle and punch. When you are punch needling, your yarn has to always be loose, so make sure each time before you start you are pulling out a good length, because if this is tight, your stitches aren't going to stay in. When you then come to do your next line of stitches, you want to try and punch in the middle of the previous stitch, so you're creating brickwork basically with your stitches. Doing this means that on the other side the loops are going to be nice and tight. If you match your stitches each time, you will then end up with holes on the other side because there'll be gaps that have been created. And when I come to finish a section, I like to do just a few extra stitches. When you have done your section, pull up the needle gently, snip the yarn, and then you're done. I like to snip off the tails so that they don't get caught when I come to do a new colour. And that is basically your first bit of punch needle. When you turn over your punch needle, it might start to look a little bit weird and crazy, but once you have finished every single piece, the yarns basically close back together and it looks a lot neater. So when you do turn it over, don't get disheartened by what you see. Try and finish it and then come back. Okay, when you're changing colour, it's so simple. You just snip off your tails, take out the yarn, and just start from step one again with your new colour. You don't have to not punch needle, you don't have to do any sort of tying off. As long as you've got good quality and the right yarns and fabrics, the stitches are tight enough that they stay in on their own, as long as you've got that right combination. Before you put the black in, it looks like there's no gap here, because obviously this is the loop side and it's going to be bigger than the flat side, but you can see here there's a little gap. When you turn it over, there's no little gap. But once you put the black in, it pushes the stitches and has a little space there. I'm going to finish the punch needle and then I'll come back to you once that is done for the next step. Okay, I'm finished, and this will be the first time I turn it over with you as well. Okay, everything's snipped, so here is how it looks first of all. So firstly, if you have any loops that are a bit long, you can literally just snip them off, because ideally you've got so many stitches on the other side that snipping off a few won't make a difference. Next thing, you want to grab some tweezers, and this you're just going to unhook any colours that have hooked over each other. The fact that the colours hook over each other is pretty natural in punch needle. You just need to spend a bit of time tidying it up at the end, and you can also manipulate the loops around so that they fit the shape better that you want them to be. A lot tidier. Because, like I say, if you've got good quality cloth and yarn and you've got the right needle, you shouldn't have to glue your punch needle projects, because the cloth keeps the loops nice and tight on the other side and it should be durable enough without any glue. However, if you want to add a bit of glue on the back of your pieces for an extra layer of protection, especially if you're using it as something functional, you can literally get away with just using some PVA glue, a nice thin layer, let it dry completely, and then move on to the next step. If I'm making something for the wall, I don't really tend to glue it because it's not going to be disturbed. So if you've PVA'd it, it should be dry at this stage. If you haven't, then we're going straight into it. We need to cut the design from the cloth. You want to ideally leave at least 1 centimetre or 2 cloth around the outside of your design. So I'm simply just going to cut away the fabric. be aware this is where it's going to start getting messy because the monk's cloth will start to fray. I personally would recommend keeping these scraps in a bag, and you can use it as stuffing for later projects or something. I've got another video explaining how I recycle a lot of my supplies. So this is going to be a very tricky design because, for example, where the antler and the cat ear are, there's not a very big gap there. It's quite small on the flat side. I like to turn it over and I can see exactly where I can safely cut without cutting the loops. You also want to snip into any indents that you have in the design. So where there's a curve, you can leave the curve. If you're doing a whole circle, you literally just cut around the circle and you're done. Whereas if you've got something that's got little indents, you need to snip in any indents. And you just want to repeat that for whatever else you are doing. The hot glue gun has heated up. We're simply going to be placing a little bit of glue on the monk's cloth, folding it and pushing it down. So it's at this point, if you were to turn these into mug coasters, you would just glue the felt on and cut them out. But I'm obviously not doing that. I am going to be sewing them onto this bag. So I realised it was easier if I put a hoop. It's going to make it easier for me to sew and attach the cats on. It's finished. This is the back. And this is the front. That is absolutely adorable and I'm excited to use it when I go out shopping. This video is going to take me a while to edit because one of the videos was like an hour 40 long and everything's sort of crashed. Got no space anywhere to store the video, so it's going to be a long one and it's going out tomorrow. But hey, just because I'm slightly behind today doesn't mean I won't be slightly ahead another day. As always, thank you for watching and I will see you again tomorrow for another day of Vlogmas.